The title of this video is The Sun. How to tell if your sun is strong. Now this is the second video that I make about the sun. In the first video I told how to tell if the sun is weak. So it was all about the problems, the challenges of having a weak sun. But what if your sun is strong? Or what if you do have a weak sun, but you solve the problems? What does it look like? How do you recognize a strong sun in the chart? Now this is important for a reason, because if somebody has a strong sun, that's a green flag. That's a very important green flag, because it means they will be confident, they'll be able to handle conflict, they'll be more loyal. It will be more stable if you have a relationship with them. So it's like a green flag in a partner. And it also shows what you see is what you get. There'll be less masking. So a strong sun, you will never ever see with a narcissist or somebody who has like an avoidant attachment style, or somebody who's masking a lot, somebody who has autism, or somebody who has cognitive distortions about their self-image, who can never take accountability. You will never see somebody like that as a strong sun. So it's very important, because if you're trying to determine if a person you're dating, if your partner, if your husband is actually good for you, if it's actually worth wasting your time, so you want to know, right? So let's make a little list of how to recognize strong sun position and why. What makes the sun strong? Well, first of all, if you look at the traditional placements of a sun, of course, sun in Leo, we all know that's its domicile. Why is it strong in the fire signs? Sun in Aries, sun in Leo, sun in Sagittarius, because it's exalted in Aries. Well, because fire is spirit. Fire is inspiration, confidence, leadership. And that's what you want with the sun. You want the energy to be outward. However, if that's true, why are all the air suns weak? Gemini sun is considered weak. Aquarius sun and Libra sun are in detriment. So the question is, if fire makes you strong, why does air make the sun weak? Also air planets, Uranus, Saturn, all of these are malefic influences of the sun. Well, the reason is that the sun doesn't like detachment. The self, the true self, not the narcissist self, not the codependent self, not the avoidant self, not the masking self, the real self is what you see, is what you get. So there will be no question about their intentions. They won't project onto you, and they'll be able to handle it if you criticize them. They'll take judgments non-personal, because they know who they are. And of course, because of its stability, the sun, it gives energy. You feel energized by them. They don't drain you. You don't feel like you're walking on eggshells around them. And if you have the sun in an air sign, the problem is the detachment. It is neglectful in its nature. I know this sounds really horrible, but air doesn't care. Yeah, like we say in Germany, it's an Eselsbrücke. Air doesn't care. Sun cares very much, very strongly, very emotional. But you want to be stable. And that's actually a potential problem. Because even if somebody has a strong sun, like fire element sun, doesn't necessarily mean they're stable, not at all. Ironically, it is often the earth or water suns that, except Pisces, that look stable, whether they are or not. The issue is, at least with fire, you know always where you stand. And that is what makes ultimately the sun strong, because the sun is about truth. It's not about, can I control myself? Can I not control myself? No, it's just about, am I myself? Whether myself is weak, strong, narcissistic, or selflessly altruistic, it doesn't matter. All that matters is it's the truth. So people who have a strong sun, you can trust them. They're very trustworthy people. You'll never be wondering, could they be trying to betray me next? Are they going to leave me? So this is actually very important, because if you do know somebody who is a narcissist or an avoidant, the chance is ridiculously high, ridiculously high, that their father or their mother or both have a weak sun. Because a weak sun has the tendency to be neglectful and untrustworthy. And both narcissism and avoidant attachment style are born out of trust issues and betrayal. A healthy sun doesn't do that. A weak sun, absolutely, very likely to do it. Okay? It's actually very important to talk about this, because none of this is common knowledge. Nobody has any idea. If you go online, you can't read about any of this stuff. So why is that? Why is it so difficult to understand what makes the sun strong? What does a strong sun actually look like? If you look around, you want to look for examples, right? Like, who has a strong sun? What do they look like? Of course, you look for a king. You look for a person in authority, a priest, a king, a guru, a teacher. Because strong suns, they will ultimately get into a position of leadership. That is just what happens naturally. Because that is where they belong. They feel like they deserve the spotlight. And if you feel that you deserve the spotlight, your sun is likely to be strong. Of course, unless you're a narcissist, in which case you're just illusional and you're just trying to create a shell, but that's a different story. So, who has a strong sun in leadership? Do you know any celebrities? Do you know anybody? Really? Because if I go online, if I watch the news, if I go through the music industry, I really struggle to find good examples of what a strong sun in reality actually looks like. Very difficult. But in my experience, it is they are representing reality. They give you reality. They enforce it. Because if you think about it, the sun feeds you. But what does it feed you? It feeds you energy that you need to survive, to perform, to act, to be present, to be seen. So people who are very visible, doesn't make the sun strong if you are often in the spotlight and if you seek the spotlight. Not necessarily, but if you're comfortable with a spotlight, if you're comfortable with getting haters and getting lots of criticism, that's definitely a strong sun. So that is why the sun is also usually strong in the chart through the following houses. Houses 1st, 5, and 10. These are the strongest houses for the sun because these are the houses where you are the most visible. First house is identity. Everybody knows who you are. It's kind of like people know about you. Like, it's very easy to tell what you are about with a first house sun. And in the fifth house, you perform, like you're always in front of people. People like what they see, and you know they like what they see, so it's easy for you to be comfortable around people or in front of people. And in the 10th house is the house of public reputation, and that's exactly what the sun is looking for. It wants reputation. So of course it's going to be good in these houses. And the sun is also going to be good in lesser extent if it's in the 9th house or in the lesser degree the 3rd house. Because the 9th, 3rd house axis is about communication. Now, of course, the sun likes to share, it likes to give. And if it teaches, which these two houses are about, that's good. That's why if you have other indicators in the chart that have to do with teaching, you may think it has nothing to do with your sun, but it does. Okay? So if that is why, by the way, that's one of the reasons why Mercury is never far away from the sun. Mercury always stays close to the sun. That's why more than statistically 20 to 30% of the human worldwide population has Sun conjunction Mercury in their natal chart. Lots of people have Sun close to Mercury because they're supposed to support each other. Because they're supposed to be about teaching. Also, if you have a strong Jupiter or a strong Mars, it's always connected to the father. You need to understand that if you want to heal your sun or make your sun work in your life, if you want success, if you want fame, if you want fortune, if you want recognition, it is very important that you don't look at the sun alone. You need to look at the other factors that belong to your father, which are Jupiter, Saturn, and to a lesser extent Mercury. Now, me personally, I have the sun conjunction the best object, Sirius, and I have Mercury in domicile, Gemini, and Jupiter in domicile, Sagittarius. And when I have Saturn in joy in Pisces, so every single aspect that I have belonging to my father is in its best or second best position possible. Of course, if that is the case, then it's not surprising if you do well, if you're very independent, very self-sufficient, you can fix problems very easily. That's why Mercury is connected to problems. Then Jupiter is teaching. So if people are listening to you, it's because you deliver the point very quickly. You change their mind very quickly. Jupiter is about mind expansion. If you can do that, you have influence over people. This is why often people who have a lot of influence on people's mind, Mercury, Jupiter's mind, find themselves in positions of power, which is why you see them as politicians. Right? Politicians know how to manipulate you. They know how to play tricks on your mind, which is why they usually get a lot of fame. So often they have a very peculiar Mercury or Jupiter position. But what about Saturn? How does Saturn help to strengthen the sun? Saturn is about making boundaries, to make sure that whatever you do will stay. So if you create an empire, you want the empire to be stable, right? It's not like, oh, I will be president of the United States, but after 2 years I'm out of office. That is, of course, no good. So Saturn makes sure you stay in office once you get there. That means any opposition, any challenge, any criticism, you'll be able to fight that off. And if bad things happen to you, you'll be able to come out on top. They won't disturb you very much. That's why people who have a weak Saturn usually suffer a lot. Not because they're suffering, but because they're bad at dealing with suffering. And it has nothing to do with the external. Yeah? Don't forget that the sun and all masculine planets that belong to the father, they're about the soul. That means they're about you. They're about taking responsibility. Both the sun and Saturn are intimately connected because they're about the conscience, which is the superego. If the superego is strong, you will assess yourself accurately, you will assess other people accurately, and you'll be able to read people well. Which is also very good for politicians, right? Because if you know how you appear, you know how to manipulate people. You know how to get fame and recognition. That's very important. So if you don't see yourself clearly, if you have problems with self-image, if you have a weak sun, Saturn can help you if you strengthen Saturn instead. That's why in my journey, when I tried to recover from narcissistic abuse a few years ago, I was studying Saturn before I even studied the sun. Because you see, my sun isn't weak. My sun is good. But I wasn't enforcing my sun. I was still attracting narcissists. And I was wondering, why is this happening? I can see myself very clearly. I have very good self-perception. And I could see that there's something wrong with them very early in the relationship. Yet I didn't do anything about it. Why? Because my Saturn and my Mars are both very weak. And both Saturn and Mars belong also to the father. Saturn Mars weak in what way? Not because my Saturn is badly placed, but because I have Saturn opposition Mars. So it's very important also that you look at squares and oppositions. Any squares or oppositions you have with the Sun. And I needed to strengthen my Saturn so I could enforce my Sun. And when I did that, suddenly I got lots of followers, like people were watching my videos, I was getting clients, my career was working out. Suddenly I was getting recognized because my Saturn was working, even though I changed absolutely nothing about my Sun. So it's very important. You know, if you just focus on one area of the chart, it's not necessarily going to fix your problems. You need to know how the Sun is connected to other planets. I would add that people with Sun conjunction Mercury are also trustworthy and truthful. Yeah, if you have any masculine planets, Mars, Jupiter, Sun, with Mercury, it helps. Of course, it depends on the sign, if it's feminine, or if Mercury is in retrograde. That affects it very strongly. But even if a person is truthful, it depends in which situations it is truthful. The person, based on the Sun, will be truthful with themselves. But they won't necessarily be truthful to others unless they have support of Mars when dealing with conflict. So, people who avoid conflict, people who don't say what's uncomfortable, they can still have a strong Sun, but they may have a weak Mars. So that is why it is not just like, okay, you can generalize that a strong Sun is always going to lead to success. Not necessarily. But it's a very important factor because it's the core of the personality. And how else can you recognize a strong Sun? Well, if somebody can handle situations in which they have to take responsibility, in which they are in charge, in which they have to give orders to other people, but they don't demand things from people that are unreasonable. You know, they're not tyrants. Whether it's a high-chair tyrant or a weakling prince, you don't really see that with a strong Sun. But you do see that a lot with a weak Sun. With a strong Sun, you see people, they make you feel better about yourself because the Sun is giving. If you are dealing with people who make you feel bad about being yourself, they either have a weak Sun or some kind of malefic on the Sun or something. I find it very unlikely to feel bad about yourself, being yourself, when you deal with a person that has a strong Sun. In my experience, all the bad criticisms that are unreasonable, the unrealistic assessments of my personality, the projections, the attacks, the smear campaigns, the character assassination attempts. 99% of the time, they came from a person with a weak sun. But when I deal with people who have a strong sun, even if they do insult me, even if they do say something bad, it doesn't feel personal. You know? You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like the person is trying to be better than me. It doesn't feel like the person is trying to take me down or to win against me. What is very interesting is that even though the strong sun can be very competitive, you will not feel like they want to destroy you or take you down. People that want to take you down have a weak sun, generally speaking, or they have some problems or something. For example, this is a very important example to mention. I once had a person, I had many encounters with him for years, and he always made jokes about me. Like, he would insult me, he would call me a fish head, he would say how I'm being ridiculous, or I look stupid, or I look like shit. He would always try to make snide remarks about me. But the way he did it, the way he looked at me while doing it, I just couldn't be mad with him. I actually laughed. Like, I actually felt bad for laughing about how he was being very rude towards me. And he was always honest. He never lied about anything. Never tried to manipulate me. Never tried to control me. But he was always making rude, what people would think is rude, comments about me. And yet it never upset me. Never triggered me. Never made me feel less than. And I was wondering, why is that? Why am I not being upset? What's going on? And I found out later that other people who don't insult me, but who give me like a backhanded compliment, you know, this kind of compliment that doesn't really feel like a compliment, like, or they say something about you like to try to help you with constructive criticism, but it feels like a personal attack. Well, it's like, wait a second, you used terrible language and you used very nice language, but you feel good and you feel horrendous. So what's going on? When somebody tells the truth about how they feel, unless your nervous system is delusional, unless you are literally delusional and your sun is super weak and you have lots of ego problems and lots of traumas, unless that is the case, even if somebody is rude, as long as it's honest and based on reality and how they really feel, it doesn't really upset you, like you don't really care. But if somebody is being nice to you, but it's not true, it really triggers me. Like, I feel really like poisoned. Like, what's going on? Like, I need to block that person because I feel disgusting and stuff like that, you know, like it's, so I need to make boundaries. And that is what many people, that's what people struggle at. When they try to make their sun stronger, yeah, let's say you have problems to be recognized or something and you're trying to be yourself in the eyes of the public or in your relationships, suddenly people start to attack you, they project that you have evil intentions and stuff like that. But when you were being manipulative, when you were being passive aggressive, when you were being dishonest, when you did give negative energy to other people, they didn't complain. This is upside down clown world, yeah, to understand that is very important. Because otherwise, when the resistance comes and the haters arrive, you go back into your little box. and you say, nah, it's too much fuss to have a strong sun. It's too much fuss to be myself and just do what I want. People always have something to criticize. People are always projecting non-stop. It is true, it doesn't stop. But somebody who really has a strong sun, they're not going to be affected by it very strongly. But somebody who has a weak sun, they're going to take breaks from social media, turning off their phone, being like, I need a digital detox because all of these projections are too much for me, overwhelming my nervous system, triggering me 24/7, frying me. The reason is that your self-esteem is weak. When other people project something onto you, you feel guilty or responsible, like it's your fault. And when you say, Facebook is so toxic, people are so toxic, I need to take a break. When the problem isn't really other people, problem is you. Your sun needs strengthening. Person with a strong sun, they get loads of haters and they thrive on it. Like, what's the problem? You need a digital detox because somebody's projecting onto you. Give me a break. This is kindergarten. This is an inner child that's very wounded, very hurt, and very ashamed because it is not sure about who they are. So when somebody comes and projects something, it validates their low self-esteem, makes them feel like, oh, so it may be true that I'm a piece of shit. But I don't know, maybe I am a piece of shit, so back into the box. This is why people self-isolate, by the way. This is why people have an avoidant attachment style. This is why people have narcissism. This is why people have the need to tell everybody how independent and free they are, as if it was something special. Like, come on, everybody needs independence. But if you need independence because your nervous system is being fried from social interaction and you feel constantly under attack and dysregulated, the problem is not other people. You can make boundaries with them. You can eliminate those other people from your life, and then the problem is solved. Oh, but the problem is other people. Oh no, my boundaries are not enough. I need to blame them. I need to blame somebody for my dysregulation. This is, again, kindergarten. Kindergarten. I'm going to repeat myself over and over, saying this is kindergarten stuff. Okay, we are children in adult bodies, acting like, they did this to me, punish them. Just make a boundary. God damn it, man. You can complain about it. Oh, that's all right. But if you don't fix the reason why you are being dysregulated, why you have low self-esteem, the external is not going to change anything. So the sun, if it's strong, doesn't make other people responsible for its failure. Victim consciousness is a weak sun. If you are a loser, weak sun. If you are a winner and you know you are a winner, and whoever comes along is nothing, like you don't care, your sun is strong. What's also important, and this is very important to mention, so listen up. Sun is about the inner judge. If the inner judge is strong, you can handle feeling guilty without feeling shame. For example, a narcissist, where the sun is at the absolute lowest possible, they can't handle any guilt. A psychopath, a narcissist, they don't have guilt. They can't process it. So that's why they can't take responsibility for anything. Always victims. A winner, somebody who can feel guilty about something without being dysregulated. So if I trigger in my videos guilt in my watchers, I know exactly what the problem is. It's nothing to do with me. Self-image is weak. So it is easily threatened, easily challenged. A king, somebody who is a winner, they're not easily threatened. You need to bring the big guns. Like you need to prove it, like with facts or something, with reality. Because the sun person is living in reality, and opinions and projections without facts, no basis in reality, so doesn't matter. And what is this about guilt? Guilt needs to be integrated. Needs to be a daily aspect of your life without disturbing you. That's why I find it so important to emphasize again and again the relationship between the sun and Saturn. The sun cannot be strong without Saturn's assistance. Saturn is how you deal with guilt and how you work with it. Now, if you are somebody who's avoiding feelings of guilt because they're so uncomfortable, that means if you're emotionally immature, this is just a fact, and you can't handle to accept the fact that you are emotionally insecure or immature, then you have a Saturn problem. Because if you can't accept that you're doing something wrong, and you need to blame the evil Georges for not having compassion for your disease, that means you can't handle guilt, processing guilt. Can't handle your own conscience. That's why avoidant personality disorder and attachment style, and also narcissism, the conscience isn't working properly. There's issues with morality, immoral behavior, unethical behavior. I mean, think about it. When somebody loves you, and you maybe love them too, but you ghost them because they have an unfulfilled need and they ask you to please consider their needs, and your first reaction is to ghost them. And you can just keep doing that. Relationship after relationship. Discarding people like they're nothing. Like they don't matter. That's a moral issue. Because it's wrong. It's evil to do that. So people who have a weak sun, weak Saturn, they do evil. Strong sun, strong Saturn, they do good. Right? Like me. Because I put the evil in place. The evil is punished and exposed by the power of the sun. So if the sun is weak, we know where the evil is coming from. That is why it's so important to emphasize the integration of guilt. And guilt-shame complexes go hand in hand. Somebody who can't process guilt is because their shame is overwhelming. And they don't know how to regulate guilt. They don't know how to deal with it. If the father was constantly trying to guilt-trip the child, constantly trying to attack the child, judge the child, shame was activated almost every single time, but guilt was there. With my father, I didn't have this problem, like I didn't feel ashamed when he told me that I did something wrong. But if you felt ashamed when your father told you that you're doing something wrong, this is actually how avoidant attachment style and emotional unavailability is created. When every time your brain tries to take accountability for something, you feel ashamed. It's almost like the brain is wired the wrong way. Guilt is not supposed to dysregulate your nervous system and make you feel triggered and anxious and adrenalized. But in avoidant attachment style and narcissism, that's exactly what's happening. And nobody talks about this. Nobody. I've never seen. Ever. And I've researched many YouTube videos. I've read many books, many articles. Nobody even mentioned this. The importance of guilt. Because we don't like it, right? We avoid, like the word suggests, what is uncomfortable and dark. And that is what Saturn helps you with. Saturn helps you to accept reality. Reality is sometimes we make mistakes. And then we feel guilty that we did something wrong. And the guilt helps us to correct our decision making, to make better choices. So guilt is good. Guilt is from the divine. Shame is evil. So if you feel shame every time you feel guilt, evil is right here. Right here. So that's why in narcissism, there's no difference between guilt and shame in the narcissist. They're both the same thing. That's why they take everything personal. That's why they're very, very defensive. And in avoidant attachment style, sorry, not sorry, but that's exactly what's happening too. That's why they're so defensive, right? You can't talk about anything. You can't resolve any conflicts because the rock of the inner judge, the warrior, the protector, the divine masculine of man is not there. There's nobody there. Like, they're gone. They ghost you. The moment you try to address a problem, the moment you try to talk about reality that activates guilt, that activates the conscience, that activates morality issues, wrong, right, question. So when I get these commentars, when I get these people attacking me, telling me, oh, you always want to be right. No, darling, you want to be right, and you don't like the fact that I actually am right, and I don't feel questioned, challenged, or threatened by you. I don't care what your opinion is. I have facts. I have observation. I will give you that. And when you disagree with it, and when I disagree with the fact that you disagree, you want to be right. I am adrenalized. So, because I'm adrenalized, and my inner wounded child shame is triggered, you are the problem. Like I said, kindergarten. A weak sun, a weak Saturn makes a person immature. Why? Because that's exactly what they represent, maturity. That's why at age 29.5, you get your Saturn return, which is your ascension into adulthood. The superego is the inner adult. Sun and Saturn is the inner adult, the masculine. Protects the soft, very juicy, divine core of the feminine. And to protect the feminine, you got to get your shit together. You got to accept reality. If you don't, you have a tendency to be delusional, projecting all the time, accepting those projections as reality because you can't distinguish, because your self-perception is weak. So how can you perceive other people accurately? That's why, for example, we have so many boundary issues. We have so many conflicts, so much distrust between people. It's completely unnecessary. It could be easily solved if the Sun or Saturn were strong. Many issues could be solved just by that alone. But unfortunately, we all have daddy issues. So our father was maybe tyrannical, unreasonable, or he was also weaponizing shame to try to get us to do something. So for example, people who lack initiative, who are afraid to make decisions or to start a conflict or whatever. They had a father that used shame to get them to do things. So now every time somebody tells them to do something, like an authority figure, like me, because that's what I am, they feel threatened and adrenalized and triggered in their fight-flight response system, because telling them to do something, even if it's right, even if it's based on reality, even if it's a fact, triggers the wounded inner child. That's what we have to work. That's what we have to fix. Otherwise, the Sun will never be strong. If you want your Sun to be strong, shame, guilt complexes are probably the most important thing that you could possibly work on. Now, if you like to know more about that, how to fix that, You can check out my services. I do somatic embodiment work. I work specifically with those blockages and implants and false self-overlays in the body. Because shame is a delusional fantasy defense the body creates to avoid prosecution and abandonment by the Father. Because the Father represents the voice of God. The superego is the voice of God, which is reality. If reality voice is tyrannical and hyper-judgmental, like nagging, like naga snake consciousness or whatever you want to call it, you need to work on that. It's inside the body. So that's why I use somatic experiencing to get out of the body. Because it's in the mind, but it is originating from the unconscious. That's why the body produces adrenaline and cortisol to react when somebody has a problem with you or criticizes you or judges you or whatever. And then because your body is doing all these reactions, you say, oh, I need a break. I need to self-isolate. So yeah. Sun, Saturn, it's in the body. Saturn rules the skin, by the way. Eczema is a big example of somebody who has a lot of fear of prosecution. Because the superego has been hijacked by... I love this example because it's so true. And what other issues? Saturn rules the bones, arthritic conditions, the joints, lymphatic stagnation, crystallization of the bodily tissues, nose issues, sinus issues, because Saturn rules the nose as well, with the heart together with the sun. So people who have a Sun-Saturn issue have nose blockages, blockages in breathing, blockages with mucus, blockages with sinus or with a spine, with a back, with the bones, deterioration of the bones, weak hips also in women when they get older. Of course, it is more likely for women to have Sun-Saturn issues than men. Because we're talking about the divine masculine, I mean. So, likewise, men are more likely to have moon issues, emotional expression, their needs, etc. Yeah. Exactly. Strength never tries to bring others down. All the sun is interested in is in strengthening itself by focusing on itself. In that sense, you could say a healthy sun is very narcissistic because you only focus on making yourself better. You don't care what other people are doing. And when other people say who you don't care about, you're so selfish, you don't care about me. So of course, the other person is a narcissist because they're focusing on you fixing their dysregulation, taking on their emotions. That's what we call emotional manipulation. When somebody says you're selfish, you're cold, blah, 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 instead of addressing, why am I not making a boundary with this? Why am I being triggered by this? What can I do about it? Instead of them trying to take control, they want you to take control. They make you responsible for what's happening. That's very interesting, yeah? Because the moment you have a strong and healthy sun, everybody starts to call you selfish. But the narcissist who always plays victim was always like, oh, everybody's mistreating me. I'm so altruistic. I'm doing everything for everybody. Why don't they love me? I'm doing all of these things for them. Nobody seems to attack them. Ridiculous. All of this upside down clown world nonsense doesn't really matter to somebody who has a strong sun. Because a strong sun recognizes what other people think about me. It's about them. It's not about me. If I don't like what they think about me, that's my issue. That means, maybe there's something I can do differently When I don't like what they say, I will change that. Not, oh, they don't like me, so F them. I mean, yeah, okay, you can, of course, that's fine to F them, but to be adrenalized, to have a cortisol response, to be like triggered by other people's perception of you. Trigger always tells you about you. Other person, make a boundary if you want to. Problem solved. But is very contagious. So if other people to you all the time, it's very likely that you as well. Unless you make it for entertainment purposes like me. Well, I do it because I find it really hilarious what people do. And for me, it's amusing. You know, to see how people always try to bring others down because they're jealous of them. Which is funny because jealousy, envy, these are also signs that you have sun issues. If you are the one who has these feelings, actually the feelings themselves are not the problem. It's not a problem to feel jealous. It's just a feeling, right? Like, what do you care if you're jealous? The issue is, what are you doing about it? Are you using that jealousy that you have to improve you? Or are you using the jealousy to bring the other person down and to devalue them and focus on them? Ironically, people think narcissists are only about themselves. You got it all wrong. They're all about you. They make you responsible for everything. So jealous people who have a weak sun, they try to bring you down. Jealous people who have a strong sun, they try to bring themselves up. Not even caring about what you're doing. Or even if they feel jealous of you, so what? Hurt people, no, they don't hurt people. Weak hurt people, they hurt people. Strong sun, strong Saturn means strong personality. Strong personality doesn't try to bring others down, doesn't give a shit. Come on. So every time somebody tries to character assassinate me, tell me in the comments, you're so evil, you're always trying to win, they have removed themselves from the discussion, which was the argument that we had. They're no longer trying to win the argument. We're now trying to win the ego conflict between me and them, in which they try to be the good guy and want me to be the bad guy. I never play this game. Never. You will never ever see me in the comments be the first to tell somebody how evil they are. This is kindergarten behavior. People who do this are in kindergarten. If, however, this is of course different, if somebody comes to me and tells me how evil I am, then of course I will not hesitate to give them a taste of their own medicine and prove with facts, not with projections and assumptions and who I assume you are bad. No, facts. Why what they say is a defense mechanism, like in a pathological reaction, a psychological mind game, to try to control me because they are dysregulated and they need to regulate their vertigo by giving me their vertigo. Like, oh, let's play catch because misery loves company. So if I catch misery, I need to give it to you. Nah. So good people, they don't go around doing that. They don't play the warden or the liberator. That's what we call the shadow persona, that you will frequently see on my posts and my comments. The warden liberator is somebody who constantly has to tell other people what to do in terms of, you're doing it wrong, you should do what I tell you to do, you should be more compassionate, you should be nicer to me. You will never see me do it. All I say is, this is what you're doing, and it's not my problem. I don't care what you do. Just don't do it to me. If you want to go around being sadistic to other people, always judging other people, I don't care. Do what you want. But on my page, if you attack me, that is just like, yeah. So, what liberators? People who try to tell you how to move. Not because they are trying to make a boundary with you. Not because they benefit. Not even that. That's what's so ridiculous about it. They don't even gain anything from you moving differently. Nothing. What do my commenters get from me being more compassionate? Being more nice? Being the sweet innocent shadow persona or whatever? What do they get? They avoid being triggered while simultaneously being in my presence. That's all. They don't get anything material. They don't get anything in terms of entertainment. They don't get any intellectual value. They don't get any. They get nothing. Just they don't have to feel adrenaline and cortisol in the system, which of course makes the body sick. The reason why people go around reacting on their triggers is because those triggers, once they are triggered, they create poison in the body. The body is literally being poisoned by cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones, they age you, they deteriorate your insides, they create inflammation in the body. So if somebody is literally physically under attack because I am triggering them, they have two options. They can either stop listening to me, which of course they won't do because they're addicted to me, they like me, because I'm the shit, or, which is much easier, because they like me so much, so they tell me to stop triggering them, so they can keep enjoying my content without having to do the inner work. See how convenient that is? Interesting, isn't it? So I know exactly what's going on here, what's going on in the body of these people, what's going on in their mind, which is probably not very much, because they're not even aware that this is happening. They're like, I feel this, no, and so, literally. Welcome to Clown World. So if you recognize any of this, if you understand these dynamics in humans, you're on top of the game. You're already pretty conscious. That's what it's about, isn't it? Strong sun is aware of what's happening. Reality. That's why the sun rules the eye. Because the eye can see what's going on. I know what you're doing, my commenters. I am aware of your subconscious pathologies. So, therefore, I will talk about them because I have the compassion to fix them, instead of having the compassion, which is fake compassion, to avoid your triggers. That is fake. It is false. Real compassion, fierce compassion, is about prioritizing the soul, the truth, reality, over everything, no matter the cost. Reality will be enforced on my page, in my environment, in my relationships, everywhere where I go. Reality will be there as long as I can do it, of course, because I'm not perfect, I'm not God. But of course my serious sun can make me a little bit grandiose sometimes, but I know it. So it's not a problem. Reality will be enforced here. And if somebody is triggered by reality, we can talk about it. But if adrenaline and cortisol is shutting down the frontal lobe, and they try to make it all about me and how I have to pamper them, how I have to play mommy for their emotions and to regulate their nervous system, so they don't get poisoned by their own body. That's just not going to happen here. It's not going to happen. Because even when I'm a Cancer Sun, oh, it's so cute. You're supposed to be my mommy, right? No. This Cancer Sun is conjunction Black Moon Lilith. It's rejecting your dependency on me to fix your issues. Your issues you have to fix on your own. I'm showing you how to be more independent of what I'm saying, what I'm doing. So while we navigate all these triggers, all these psychological defenses, all this, oh, I feel so bad, so you need to do it. You will find that at the end of all of this is gone. No matter what I say, no matter how I say it, it should not ever trigger your nervous system. That is mentally ill. No matter what anybody says to you. When somebody thinks something of you, projects something onto you, and you feel dysregulated, that's a lack of boundaries. That's weakness of a personality. That's a lack of self-efficacy or self-esteem that we can fix when we are honest about it. But that's exactly what's going on. But when we are dishonest, and we try to avoid that because we don't want to feel guilt, because guilt and shame in our delusional world of our body, which is traumatized, is the same, then other people will always be the problem. We will always be reactive, lacking initiative, and fear of failure will be our constant companion, driving our actions so we don't have to face the discomfort of growth. Because the ego is a shell. The ego represents your sense of self. There's nothing wrong with the ego being a shell. Carl Jung explained that in many of his books. It's just that the ego has a tendency to become rigid because it is causing cognitive dissonance and discomfort when it tries to grow. A strong Sun and strong Saturn, they can handle that little, very short, really not that long, period of discomfort and navigate through it. But of course, people with very weak Sun Saturn, who were never validated by the daddy issues or whatever, they don't have the wisdom. That's what we call in Chinese medicine their ability to regulate the uncomfortable emotions. So they're emotionally immature. Yeah. So it's interesting because we don't think emotional maturity is connected to the Sun or Saturn at all. Nobody talks about it. I never heard about this. But to me, it's absolutely clear. It's absolutely obvious. I can see it very clearly. But that's exactly what it's about. Because you need to be mature, responsible, strong in character, noble in your decisions, which means you consider the consequences of your actions, and to take responsibility for when the consequences come, in order to be a leader. And unfortunately, so many wounded masculines out there, both in men and women, but we don't see much of that. We don't see much of that at all. Mostly we just see people being offended about everything, being very confused about who they are, trying to create a false self, a false identity, by putting themselves into some kind of a group. I don't even want to go there really, because, yeah. Anyways, this is my explanation of how to understand a strong Sun. And if you find this video helpful, please leave a like and subscribe. If you'd like to see more videos of this in the future, or if you'd like to have a session with me, you can message me at any given time. You can give me a comment for suggestions of what you'd like to learn about next. If you want to have more videos like this, talking me about other planets, you can leave it in the comments below. If you're interested in my readings, you can check out my description or my services on my page. and you can book a reading with me directly from Messenger or email. With that being said, thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next video.